looking at it at the
There it goes. Okay. I just wanted to make sure because I didn't want anything to be missed. So as I was excuse me. So as I was saying, next you have private and community foundations. So those are the ones that usually cater to most to like NGOs and nonprofits. And usually their whole thing is to provide funding to NGOs and nonprofits for charitable, education, or other mission driven purposes. So those are usually the most common type of funder types that you'll see. So this can be maybe like if we're talking about the United States, like the Carnegie Mellon Foundation is a big one that focuses on education and research innovation. A lot of let me see here. Let me see, the World Bank has its own spinoff of a foundation that is used to provide grant funding. USAID used to have foundations attached to it that give out funding. So those are usually really well suited for nonprofits. Next, you have corporate social responsibility organizations. So these are usually businesses, for-profit companies that invest in social or environmental initiatives. So they set aside some of their business funds specifically to create grants for people to carry out different social or environmental initiatives on their behalf, right? So let's say if it's an organization that is an education tech business where they provide education technology and things of that nature. What they may do is they may have an attached foundation, or they just simply may just spin off some of their revenue funds for charity purposes and provide grants for individuals that are looking to bring their education services or activities or programming within the 21st century. And that can be anything from purchasing computers, getting individuals more interested in AI. It can look like a lot of things. So again, these are usually grants that come specifically from for-profit businesses. And then last, you have multilateral organizations. So these are international bodies like the UN or World Bank that support large-scale development and humanitarian efforts globally. So again, similar to private and community foundations, but their scope tends to be really, really big. So it could be something like, stopping world hunger, access to education, things like that, like really, really, really big issues that the UN and World Bank have the resources to solve. And they spin out a lot of their money to other organizations that are able to tackle those really big issues as well too. So again, UN and World Bank, they really like they do. Obviously, anything can happen. They definitely do give funds to like smaller organizations, but they're really looking to fund bigger organizations, right? So like national organizations, other international organizations that attack, or rather that makes it their business to help solve those really big, big, big problems. So again, with organizations like the UN or World Bank, they're looking for big picture. They want you to solve really big problems. Okay. Okay. And also, I want to take the time to talk about diverse grant types as well too. So just like you have diversity within your grant funders, there's also diversity in the type of grants you can write. So first and foremost, you have your project grants. These grants tend to be fairly small, and funding is allocated for a specific project with a defined beginning and end. So for example, let's say it's a 6 month project. It's gonna start, in February and end in 6 months. You have very specific objectives, goals, and a budget specifically for that project. So it's kind of like, and these grants are usually one and done. Very, very rarely do you see a renewable project grant, right? They're just there to give you money to fund an event, a particular, trip, or whatever whatever project that can be solved within a short amount of time. So think a project that's anywhere between 3 to 6 months and at the absolute longest a year. Okay. Then you have your general operating support grant. And this is flexible funding for an organization's core activity, overhead costs, and general operations. So again, they call it general operations because it's for your overall operating costs. So like basically whatever that budget is that helps keeps the lights on at your organization, helps keep programs running, projects going, people employed, those grants are used for that. Now, within general operating support grants, there are usually two types. You have restricted and unrestricted funding. The ones that we love are unrestricted funding, meaning they will give you the money and say, go be great, go do what you need to do. Restricted funding is go do what you need to do for your organization, but here are the parameters around what you can and cannot do, right? So an example of that is, hey, we'll fund everything except hiring individuals. We'll fund everything except you purchasing food for a program or something like that. They have very specific things that they will and won't do. But again, the best type of grant, in my opinion, is always an unrestricted general operating support grant, because you have the flexibility to use that money or to use that award any way you see, any way you deem fit, as long as it's not illegal, any way you deem fit, you can use that funding. Next, you have capacity building grants. So these are designed to strengthen an organization's internal infrastructure, leadership, or skill, often through training, technology, or strategic planning. So I also like to call capacity building grants planning grants as well too. So anything that helps make your organization better and build it, whether it's infrastructure, leadership, hiring individuals, hiring a consultant, that's what a capacity building grant and or planning grant is there for. So they will give you X amount of dollars so you can maybe, hey, we're trying to improve our evaluation plan, or we're trying to conduct research and we need funds to hire a researcher or hire a consultant to help us, get this off the ground. That's what that capacity building grant is used for. Next, you have matching, or what they call challenge grants. So these are funds awarded on the condition that the recipient raises a specific amount from other sources, incentivizing a broader fundraising efforts. So with matching or challenge grants, they could say, hey, we're going to give you $50,000, but you have to put up at least half of that, or you have to, you have to match that 50 with maybe $20,000, right? And you have to be able to show us that you have $20,000 available in assets so we can go ahead and match that, right? So these are far and few in between. Sometimes you have matching, sometimes you don't. Usually matching grants are for really big dollar amounts, so usually like six-figure dollar amounts, and they want you to have maybe like a third of that, a fifth of that, a piece of that money already for them to give you the amount that you're soliciting for. And then last, you have program grants. So this is funding specifically for programs and programs only. So for services, and it's not for a single project. So it's supporting a sustained initiative with long-term impact. So when you're writing a program grant, all the funds, all the things that you put that you need for your budget, it needs to be only strictly for the program, right? If it's not specifically or strictly for the program and it kind of gets into that realm of general operating support, they're not going to fund it. So for programmatic grants, it is the funds are used for keeping a program going or starting a new program. So if you want to, maybe you already do education-based work, but maybe you want to start an after-school tutoring program or something like that. Excuse me, something like that, or a homework help program. That's when you go for a program grant. So it's either to sustain or start a program, and it has to be very, very specific to a program. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to get some technical difficulties going on here. Here we go. Okay, now really quickly, we're going to go into just the overall deconstructing. Can somebody mute, please? Thank you. So now we're going to get into deconstructing grant solicitations, right? So again, this is actually touching on something that Stanley brought up a little earlier, which was the whole project management piece. And then another individual talked about like, well, how do we know what to do? How do we best, how do we start like that research process as far as grants are concerned? So the way you do that first, after you have your proposal, as far as that project management piece, and then also learning if the grant makes sense for you and your organization or for your program as a whole is just the breaking down of the RFPs, which is request for proposals, or CFPs, which is call for proposals. They usually use them interchangeably. So first thing you want to do once you get that CFP or that RFP, you want to identify eligibility or alignment. So you want to make sure that eligibility section, you almost always want to read that first, along with what the grant is trying to accomplish, right? So you want to make sure you're eligible because, and you want to do that research well, because nothing is worse than writing a proposal and then realizing that you're actually not eligible for the proposal or for the grant at all. So you end up doing all of this work for absolutely nothing. That has happened to me before, where an organization has hired me to write a grant on their behalf. I'll start writing, I'll stop and I'll be like, well, let me go and double check the RFP, the CFP, and make sure that they are truly aligned. And then I will go in sometimes and do some research of my own, and I find out that they're not eligible. So sometimes eligibility could be based on region, it can be based on project types. Sometimes it can be based on how much money you as an organization makes, right? So for example, it could say something like, we are not in the business of funding organizations that make more than $1 million a year, right? As far as your overall budget is concerned. If your budget is over $1 million, you need not even apply for this, because we're not funding organizations whose operational budget is over $1 million, right? And I've had that happen where somebody will not read that. Their budget is well over $1 million, and I've done all of this work, and they still have to pay me for all of this work that I've done thus far. Because again, you have to research. Next is just funding priorities and scope. So you want to determine the specific problems the funder is aiming to solve and what they expect from you as an organization if they give you the funds. And you want to make sure that you do this without running into something called mission creep. So mission creep is defined as when you alter the mission, your activities, your program so much to fit into a grant solicitation that you don't even recognize your organization anymore. So it can be really tempting and easy to fall into that trap, because it's like, wow, we really, really want this award. This is a 6-figure award. We really want this, but maybe we're not the absolute best fit. So maybe if we tweak this and tweak that and tell them that we can do this, even though we really don't do that. And then, it goes on and on and on, and it easily turns into mission creep. So you want to be mindful of that. So again, you don't want to have to stretch your organization so far from what you all do just to get the money. If it's a case where you all are not a good fit, you are just simply not a good fit, and you need to look for another solicitation. Next is application structure and requirements. So one thing I do appreciate about official RFPs and CFPs is that they are very, very, very detailed and explicit as far as how they want your application structured, right? So they will tell you explicitly, hey, we need you to have an executive summary, organizational summary. We need a chart. We need this, we need that. And they'll tell you exactly what order everything should go in. They'll tell you exactly what each section of your proposal should contain. And if you have any attachments or require any attachments, they will tell you explicitly what attachments you need to include. Like, hey, you need to make sure you have completed and filled out forms A through Z here within the solicitation. Make sure you fill that out. Make sure you include your budget. Make sure we have fiscal statements that are audited from at least 3 years ago. So they break that down. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of what exactly do I tell them? What exactly do they need and want, right? When it comes to putting together a proposal. So make sure you research that so you'll know exactly how to put together your proposal. And then next is key dates and submission protocols. So not all deadlines. So note all deadlines. So you can at times have 2 different deadlines within one grant solicitation. So for example, they could say, hey, we need you to draft a letter of intent, which is basically a letter saying, hey, this is our organization, this is what we do. we do intend to apply for grant solicitation B135, right? That's literally all the letter is. But you have a set time that you have to do that. And a lot of times, if you don't apply that or if you don't meet that first deadline, they won't give you access to the official grant solicitation. So you want to make sure that you know all deadlines. So, and that includes, your full proposal, and then also question and answer periods as well too. A lot of solicitations will say, hey, we're going to have two different webinars where we're answering questions in regards to this grant. One is going to be on a Tuesday at 5 o'clock. The other one is going to be on a Friday at 2 o'clock. So you want to make sure you're there and available so you know when and where those are so you can ask questions if you have them. So you need to understand also the submission method too. Is it an online method? Do you have to put it in the mail? When do they need to have it? What happens if you run into any technical issues? You need to make sure that you understand that and you submit ahead of time to where if anything happens, because problems happen, issues, emergencies happen all the time, you want to make sure you have enough time in place to where you can go ahead and submit on time. So my rule of thumb is always make sure your proposal is ready to be submitted at least 72 hours before the due date, because that will give you time to where something goes wrong, you're having technical difficulties, whatever the case may be, they can have at least 2 business days to address your issue and help you with your problem. So always, 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 as much as humanly possible, 72 hours ahead of schedule. Okay, and that is the end of module 1. So before we move forward with module 2, do we have any questions, concerns, anything of that nature? It looks like I see a couple of questions. I see a question in the chat from Margaret, and it says, what is my proposal if it's for a startup? How do I zero in on organizations that are open to startups? So I'm assuming when you say startup, you're talking about a for-profit business. So if you're looking for grants that are specifically for profit businesses, one, I always start by saying that there are, by in comparison to grants for nonprofits and NGOs, there are way more grants available for nonprofits and NGOs than there are for businesses, right? Because your quote unquote grant or your grant award is the revenue that you bring in. That's not true when it comes to nonprofits and NGOs. So there are some organizations that are open to startup and things of that nature. The last training that we did with the embassy, we had literally had an entire day that talked about that. So there are some that out there when you look in your different search engines, like again, grants.gov or instrumental.com. And again, I'll show you all kind of what that website looks like toward the end. You go in there, you can select in your filters like, hey, I'm a for-profit business. I need grants for for-profit businesses. So that's how you can kind of zero in on grants that are open to startups or businesses. You just have to be a bit strategic about what that looks like. So thank you so much for that question. Do we have any more? Does anybody want to speak or ask a question before we go into module 2? Or let me see here, I'll put something in the chat. So we have a question. Oh, we have an hour remaining, so I want to make sure I kind of chug along. So I'll answer this last question before we move forward. And it says, what if my proposal is oriented towards academic research to inform policy making? That's perfectly fine. There are plenty of academic research grants that are available as well too. And of course, academic institutions, unless they are explicitly for-profit institutions, are open to nonprofits and things of that nature for research. So let me go ahead and kind of chug along. And I want to make sure I at least touch on every module. And again, if anybody wants follow up or has specific questions, I'll give my contact toward the end and then we can connect after the fact. So with module 2, we have needs assessment and evidence-based gathering. So this is where we talk about that data and how to use it to support your proposals. So again, crafting strong need statements and evidence. So again, you want to go from a need statement. So what a need statement is it essentially says, this is the problem that we have. This is how, this is the extent of the problem. This is how we want to solve it. This is why we need your investment when it comes to solving said problem. So first you want to go from problem to need. So you want to clearly define the gap between the current reality and the desired future. So you want to focus on the beneficiary's unmet need, not just strictly the problem in and of itself. And again, you want to use data to illustrate the scale and scope of the need. So that's using research articles, business write-ups, case studies, things of that nature to support the magnitude and the scope of the issue. Next, you want to do asset-based framing. So you want to highlight community strengths, resources, and capacity. So again, the communities or the individuals that you're trying to assist and help with your organization, you don't want to essentially write and say something along the lines of, oh my God, these poor people, they don't have this, they don't have that, this is such a problem. You want to frame that in a way that shows not the deficit, but shows what they have at their fingertips and what they're doing already to solve the problem. They just essentially need further assistance in removing those barriers, right? You want to show that they're already doing the work. And then last, gathering compelling evidence. So utilize a mix of quantitative data, so like statistics, surveys from official sources, and qualitative data. So like testimonials, case studies, focus groups, interviews, things of that nature to strengthen your claim. Okay, so again, you can all take time and go through this when you all look through the presentation, but I have crafted a need statement formula. So I'm pretty sure some of you are like, well, all of that is great. How exactly do I form a need statement? So here's a formula that you follow. First, you clearly articulate the core challenge or the unmet need of the community. You devise, or rather you provide compelling evidence. And then again, you highlight community asset and strengths. So you want to make sure you do all of that in that particular order to have a very strong need statement. And here's an example of a strength-based need statement. So a statement that encompasses all of what we just talked about. So again, you can read this at your leisure, but I'll read it out loud really quickly for us. So this need statement states that while the community of Turkana has demonstrated remarkable resilience and resourcefulness in adapting to arid conditions, access to consistent, safe, and potable water remains a critical unmet need. This is evidenced by the 40% increase in waterborne diseases among children under 5. And you saw, see right here where the resource comes from. And then over 70% of households relying on unprotected water sources, leading to reduced school attendance and economic productivity. However, the community possesses strong indigenous water harvesting techniques and a highly engaged network of local leaders and women's groups eager to co-create and lead sustainable water management solutions. So that's just a very brief snippet of what a needs-based statement needs to look like when you're writing. Of course, it's going to be a lot longer, but this is very much a needs statement wrapped up in a paragraph. So you want to have all of that as a part of your needs statement. And again, I will provide examples of that in your packet that will go out so you can see what an official, like a more fleshed out needs statement looks like. Okay, so we kind of breezed through module 2 as it pertained to need statements. So now we're going to kind of get into the meat of our presentation, which is proposal architecture. So how do you put together a proposal, starting with logic models, objective setting, and we are going to do a bit of a SMART goal exercise, but I think for the sake of time, I'm going to let you all do that on your own. So we're going to actually skip that part just for the sake of time, because I want to make sure I get through everything in a timely manner. So I apologize, because this is one of the issues that I always have when it comes to doing this presentation in particular. It is so much information, and it can be very difficult to kind of, squeeze it all in. So I try to do my best to make sure that I provide, alternative ways of getting all of this information outside of like me lecturing and things of that nature. So again, apologize in advance. This is a lot of information, and 2 hours is nowhere near enough. Each module can honestly be its own presentation in and of itself. But I say all that to say, let's get into it. So first we have a logic model, right? Every nonprofit organization, every organization needs to have a logic model. And a logic model does these things. At first, it presents the impact, which is long-term, broader changes you seek in society or in the community. So, for example, reduced literacy rates or just overall improved community well-being. Very much big picture. That's what your end goal is. You want to make an impact. Next, you have your outcome, and those are specific changes or benefits for participants resulting from your activities. And they can be categorized as short-term, medium-term, or long-term. So that's how outcomes can be categorized. So an example of a short-term goal could be improved reading scores between semester to semester. Next, you have outputs, which are direct and tangible products or services delivered by your activities. So for example, the number of students attending like an after-school program is an example of output. Then you have your activities. So again, what does your program, what does your organization do, right? So the processes, events, or actions that the program undertakes to achieve its objectives. So that can be the overall after school class, literacy classes, teacher training workshops, parent engagement sessions, so forth and so forth. And then last you have inputs, which are resources invested in the program, such as funding, staff, volunteers, curriculum, so forth and so forth. So that is the anatomy or what a logic model includes. And then logic models, they have different tiers of complexity. So first, again, I have formulas here because I love to make sure formulas are included. So first you have your first tier, which is basic, and it focuses on direct relationships. So only involving inputs, activities, and outputs. So ideal for smaller projects or initial concept proposals, right? So your formula for that is resources plus actions equal direct results. So that is a very quick way to throw together a logic model or to write about a logic model within a proposal. Next, you have intermediate. So it expands to include short-term and medium-term outcomes. So the formula for that is resources plus actions equal direct results equals short-term changes and medium-term changes. Then last, you have something that is a bit more comprehensive and a bit more complex, and it incorporates all elements in detail. So your inputs, activities, outputs, short, medium, long-term outcomes, and ultimate impact. So this is best for complex multi-year programs and strategic initiatives. So if you're putting a grant proposal together, you usually unless they specifically ask you for your full logic model, which more than likely they won't you want to stick to tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 3 is usually for internal purposes only, right? Because it involves all of these things that the funder doesn't necessarily need to know about. It's something that you need to know about within your organization, and it will help you better develop your intermediate and your basic. So if you want to be able to successfully define tier 2 and tier 1, you need to always start with tier 3 and get it as comprehensive as possible, because it's really easy to pull everything out that you need for intermediate and basic versus starting with basic and trying to get to comprehensive. So again, here's just an example of a logic model tier in practice, right? So again, you can take your time at your leisure and look through this, but for the sake of time, let's just look through our basic tier right here. So a comprehensive overview of immediate project understanding. So first you have your inputs, right? So you have your funding, staff, books, physical classrooms. The activities that you do, which is daily reading sessions, tutorings, and book clubs, and then your outputs equal number of sessions held, number of books distributed, and number of participants, right? So that's a really easy way to break that down. And this is something that can do really well for a proposal. Same with the tier 2 as well too. But again, as you get access to this presentation and you all have access to it, you can take your time and look over what these look like. And then again, I will include a fill-in model for you, a Word doc model. So if any of you need help or want to develop your own logic models, you will have a template already ready to go for that purpose. Okay, along with defining and putting together your logic model, you also want to define your goals as well too. So the best way to do goals is SMART goals. I'm pretty sure some of you have heard about SMART goals before, but just want to go over them really quickly. You have specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So specific, clearly state what you intend to achieve, who will be involved, where it'll take place. Measurable, you need to define how you will track your process. Achievable, ensure that the objective is realistic and obtainable. So don't go so far and above that it's something that it sounds really cool on paper, but you in reality cannot accomplish that with the level of resources that you have at your fingertips. And then you want to make sure that it's relevant. You want to confirm that the objective aligns with your organization's missions, the community needs, and the funding priorities. And then last, it needs to have a clear deadline or time frame. So it needs to be time bound. So an example of a SMART goal is down here. So first, your original goal is to improve community health. That's incredibly vague. We don't know how you're going to accomplish that. We don't even know if that's achievable. We don't know any of these things. So the way that you would rewrite that goal as a SMART goal is as such. So instead of saying improve community health, you will say to reduce the incident of waterborne diseases by 25% among children under 5 in Gingertown by December 31st, 2024. You're going to do that through improved access to clean water resources. And again, you can expand that out and talk about exactly how you're going to improve. But for the most part, a SMART goal is just as simple as this. Very, very simple, very easy to put together. So again, I had a hands-on exercise created for you all, but again, you can all take your time at your leisure and focus on putting SMART objectives together. So you want to create one distinct SMART objective, and you want to, and I would encourage you in your WhatsApp groups that you make after this, that you share them back with the individuals in your group. But yes, making a SMART goal is fairly easy, and the formula, you just follow it as such. Okay, now we're going to get into the nitty gritty of what exactly needs to be a part of your grant proposal. Now, I always say that a grant proposal in particular almost always asks for the same 5 things: one, two, three, four, 5 things in just different ways. But no proposal is a proposal without an executive summary or a summary of some sort, whether it's an organizational summary or the executive summary of your overall proposal, methods and activities, detailing your how and your timeline and actions to achieve the objectives, an evaluation plan. How are you going to measure success, budget and sustainability, what your financial needs are, what is your budget looking like? Is this something that can continue on? And your organizational capacity. So you want to showcase your team's expertise and track record to build funder confidence. So again, as far as your people resources, do you have enough skilled individuals to help you accomplish your goals? So you want to make sure you include that. So let's break each part down a little bit further. So first, you have your executive summary. So this is the summary of your entire proposal. The executive summary should be the very last thing that is written, because you cannot provide an executive summary if the proposal is not written. So it summarizes the problem, solution, expected impact, and the funding request. And it should read in a way that can compel the reader to continue. So it's like that first hook that gets them excited about your proposal. Next, you have methods and activities. So you want to detail the actions that your program will undertake to achieve its objectives. So include timelines, methodology, if we're talking about academic research, and the how-to of your project. This is where you go into the nitty-gritty of this is how we plan to do what we do. And you want to be as detailed as possible. And then next you have your evaluation plan. This is typically a place where a lot of people stumble, because they'll have their methods put together, their budget right, organizational capacity, they'll have all that in place. But when you ask them how do they plan to measure all of that, people get stuck. So you want to make sure that you have things in place that demonstrates accountability and your project, your program, or your organization's ability to achieve results. So an example of the evaluation plan is, hey, we take surveys, we track, school data, things of that nature. And if our participants' reading scores improve by 12 points every month or every semester, or however you want to write that out, then that's how we know we're successful. Again, that's, very brief, but essentially that's what an evaluation plan does. And you usually want to have that evaluation plan already in place. You don't want to be just now developing an evaluation plan for a grant unless it's something for like a brand new program or something like that. But if you're an organization that's been around for a while, at this point, you should already have an evaluation plan in place. Next, of course, is your budget and sustainability. So make sure you present a clear, itemized budget. So again, I stress itemized budget. It's not enough to just have specific pockets of money. So it can't just be like food, school, utilities, things like that. It has to be very much itemized because it's a lot easier to take an itemized budget and make it more condensed than to take an already condensed budget and itemize it out. So make sure that your budgets for your programs and your organizations are always itemized and that they align with the activities that you do. And then last, your organizational capacity, you want to make sure that you have qualified expertise and a track record of meeting your goals for your organizational capacity. So for example, if you're an education program and your goal is to improve literacy for Kenyan youth, you want to have people that have expertise in education. You want to have people that has expertise in like libraries, literacy, things of that nature, right? You don't want, say, people who their main area of expertise is agriculture business, because that wouldn't make sense within the scope of what you're trying to do with literacy and education. So you want to make sure that the people and their skill set aligns with your organizational capacity. Okay, so again, just some examples of some storyboard components. I'm not going to go over each one, but I'll just do two. So first, let's do the executive summary example. So an example of what that'll look like in a sentence form is a leading organization proposes a $500,000 project to provide clean water access to 10,000 residents in arid in arid regions of northern Kenya over 2 years, aiming to reduce waterborne diseases by 40% and improve community health. So that's essentially a summary of what your proposal is asking for. They know how much you're asking for, how many people you're seeking to help, how long is this going to be across, so 2 years, and what the overall impact is going to be, right? So that's your executive summary summed up in a sentence. Of course, it's going to be a lot longer, but for the sake of this presentation, it'll be in a sentence. And then last, you'll have your budget and sustainability example. So this is how you, for example, plan to allocate funds. 40% is going to be for infrastructure purposes, 30% for community training, 20 for project management, and 10% for monitoring and evaluation to ensure sustainability through community ownership, local partnerships, and income generating activities from water sales. So again, just some examples of what that would look like within a storyboard component. Now we're at module 4. I'm going to take a break and we'll go into the chat to see if we have anything going on. I believe this is just still emails. As we move forward, because we got about 15 minutes left in the presentation, does anybody have any questions or concerns about what I've presented already that cannot wait until the end of the presentation? And I'm going to take that silence that I can continue to move forward. So we're going to go into module 4, and this is budget basis. So again, we're going to talk about budgets. How do we make our budgets? How do we make our budgets really solid when it comes to putting together our proposals? So sustainable and practical budgeting, right? So you want to make sure that your budgets align with your program and or organization, that you have realistic projections based on cost estimates on accuracy, justifiable data, and considering current market rates and historical expenses of your organization and or program. Excuse me, you want to make sure that your budgets are flexible and have contingency pockets built in. So for example, I always advise nonprofits organizations, when they're building their budgets, include a modest contingency fund. So if something pops up like, hey, we are a STEM based organization and we use computers a lot, and oh my God, 3 of our computers have broken. We want to make sure that there's enough money set aside to where you can purchase new computers and keep the programming going. So you want to always make sure that there's like a fiscal buffer in your budget. And then next, long-term vision. You want to demonstrate how the project will be sustained beyond the grant period, if applicable. So do's and don'ts of budget development. Again, take time at your leisure to read these, but I'm just going to go over some of the most important ones. So again, do be detailed, itemize budgets whenever possible. Make your budgets itemized and break down the cost in specific line items. And then also, excuse me, make sure specifically if we're talking about grant proposals that your budget aligns with the narrative. So you want to ensure that your budget reflects activities described in your proposal. If you say you're going to fund after school programming, but there's nothing in your budget that reflects that, then your budget does not align with your narrative and it does not align with your proposal. And then of course, for don'ts, you want to make sure that your budget is accurate. So you don't want to overestimate and you don't want to underestimate, because a lot of times if funders sees discrepancies within your budget as it pertains to overestimating specifically, then they will call you and say, hey, your budget looks a little funny. What's going on here, right? So you want to make sure that your budget is as accurate as humanly possible. I have many stories of organizations who over padded their budgets and they were given awards and grant funding based on that budget. And when those numbers did not line up, they had to give some of that money back. So you don't want to be in a situation like that. So make sure that your budgets are as accurate as humanly possible. And then again, lump expenses. So avoid vague categories like food, school, education, miscellaneous. Again, that goes back to making sure that everything is incredibly detailed within your budgets. And you want to make sure that your budget is sustainable, right? That it makes sense over the long term. So that is the main meat of what you want to do when it comes to budgets. And then again, if you are a nonprofit organization and you have, you do general operating and you have programs, you should already have these budgets worked out. Budgets need to change every fiscal year. You should not be changing and modifying your budget in the middle of a fiscal year unless some crazy catastrophe happens, like a global pandemic, for example. You should not be adjusting your budgets. Those budgets should be set in stone at the top of the fiscal year. Whatever that fiscal year looks like for you and your organization, those budgets should already be put together. Okay, again, this is just some budget discussions, but we can wrap this up into the Q&A if anybody has any questions. But again, this is just going over things that I've already explicitly stated, which is justification in your budgeting, making sure it follows compliance and guidelines for your proposals, monitoring, making sure you're always looking at your budgets, making sure they make sense, making sure that you're tracking expenditures so you can incorporate that data into your budgets for the next fiscal year, and reporting and accountability. So always develop clear and transparent, clear and transparent financial reports that demonstrate responsible leadership, stewardship of funds and measurable progress. Okay, and speaking of reporting, our very last topic for tonight is going to be reporting and grant management protocols. So again, that includes post-award management, tracking and compliance, relationship building, which we've already discussed, and technological solutions. So using different dashboards to help manage all of that. So again, you want to ensure compliance. So this is mainly for when you win the award. So they say you win an award for $50,000. You have that award. Let's all celebrate. Now comes the work after you've spent the money. So now that you have the award, now that the money has been spent, now you have to give a report on what you did with those funds and what were the outcomes. So one, you want to make sure that you adhere to all financial and programmatic guidelines. And again, that goes back into our RFP discussion, making sure that you read through all of that so you can know exactly what they expect as far as reporting guidelines and compliance for managing that award that they give you. And then you also want to maximize your impact. So again, diligent management ensures resources are effectively used to achieve project objectives and create tangible results. So you want to make sure you showcase that within your reporting. That can look like, data sources, that can look, like tables, graphs, whatever you need to use, or of course, just written narrative that shows how you've maximized the money that you've been awarded to achieve ultimate and maximum impact. Next, building trust. Again, when your reporting is done really well, you build trust with that organization, and you better set yourself up for receiving additional funds from them at a later date. So if they open the grant again and you're eligible to apply, they will remember how well you did your reporting. They will remember how professional you were and how you handled things. And they know that you can be a great steward of any award that they give you, no matter how big or small. And then you also have learning and growth. So again, reporting is another way to also report on what you learned and growth, and what you grew from. So for example, the best plans don't always go perfect, right? We know that to be true in our lives. The same is no different within grant writing, proposal development and running your organizations and programs. So if something happens and, say for example, hey, we meant to hit a target of 150 students served, but we only made 100, you need to be transparent as far as why you did not hit that target of 150, and just let them know, what that reason was, and also what parameters, what things you're going to put in place to make sure you meet those goals moving forward. So as long as you're transparent and honest and responsible with how you steward money and how you your funds, you're going to be in a great place when it comes to the reporting on the back end. And then again, this is more tracking and compliance. So again, data integrity. Don't lie about your data. Always tell the truth about, what you found, what you saw, things of that nature. Again, cannot stress enough, follow funder guidelines. Performance monitoring, always continuously track progress against key performance indicators and objectives. So making sure that there's a mechanism in place to always track the impact or the success of the activities that your program or your organizations are doing. And again, ethic reporting. So present project achievements and challenges transparently to foster trust and accountability. Okay, and then last for tonight, building lasting funder partnerships. So we talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but I'm just going to go over it very quickly. Make sure you always have open lines of communications with your funders before, during, and after the grant process, whether you are awarded a grant or not. So an example of what that looks like can be just sending follow-up emails, or if you have a newsletter, making sure that that funder has a copy of your newsletter so they can keep abreast of what you have going on. Transparency and trust. Be honest about everything, your successes and your challenges. So you want to build openness with funders. And then demonstrate impact. So clearly articulate the tangible results and broader impact of your investments, or rather of their investment in you. And you want to connect your activities to outcomes. So obviously always make those connections, and then engage and collaborate. Invite funders for site visits. Site visits are really, really excellent so they can see with their own eyes the work that you're doing. So if you are working with funders that are located in the same country, state, or town that you're located in, please invite them for site visits, invite them to your events. That is an excellent way of building that relationship with a funder. And seek their input, ask them for help if you need assistance. That's why they're there. They want to make sure that they protect their investments. So if you need help or assistance with something, reach out to them and make sure you involve them in your organization's journey wherever appropriate. Okay. So now we are officially at our question and answer session. So it looks here, let me see here.
We have some questions. I think we missed them as people are writing the email. There's one from Michelle that says, how do you position a private tech firm as a credible guarantee in spaces traditionally dominated by NGO?
Okay, so the way you do that, again, as I stated in the beginning, you want to find funders that specifically give funds to um, for-profit entities. So if there is a grant that is available and it is for nonprofits or NGOs, as a startup, as a business, you will not have access to that grant. That's just simply how it goes. So you want to essentially, check for individuals that are checking for you, right? If that makes any sense. So you want to make sure that you always zero in on that you zero in on grants or funders that are adaptive or that are open to funding for-profit entities. Jane, maybe in the future, that
Mhm.
sounds like to me that we need that business presentation in the future as well
Oh,
too,
yeah,
because I always
true.
find that every time I do a presentation specifically for NGOs, we have a lot of people that are like, well, what about businesses? How do we get grants as well too? So definitely I have a couple of resources available for that. So I will send those as well to, like, with the resource packet, I'll send Jane as far as how to best position yourself as a business so you can write proposals and do solicitations for organizations that fund business related grants. So thank you so much for that question. Do we have any more, Jane?
Yeah, I don't know if you had read this, but there's one from Brooks that says, I understand that funders often issue calls for proposal or expression of interest when they're looking to support projects that align with their mission. But in a situation where you already have an idea or solution that fits closely with the funder's mission, is it advisable to proactively pitch it to them? In your experience, how does that typically play out?
Usually when it comes to proactively pitching, that's usually when you have a connect or you reach out to maybe like a program manager or somebody that is a funder or a grant maker, and you just simply say, hey, for example, you can say a colleague of mine told me a lot about your organization. We do very similar work. I would love it if we can meet virtually for about 15 minutes so we can kind of share ideas, right? That's a very low stakes way of, preemptively going to funders and getting to know them better. Sometimes, depending on the solicitation or depending on the foundation, they'll straight up say no, we don't do that, because there are way too many organizations that want to connect with us. There's no way we could do that. Also, there are some that are very much open to that. Or another thing that you can do, if you know who's in charge of the funding or can kind of put two and two together and figure out who's a part of the funding via their website, usually their about us section, like who are the key leaders within that funding organization, you can connect with them on LinkedIn and just send them a message via LinkedIn. So I've done that before as well too. And I've gotten a grant through that, because I was able to connect, two organizations together so that they can kind of talk to one another. They built a rapport. And then when a grant solicitation came out from that funder, that organization applied and they ended up getting a grant for $10,000. So yes,
Mm.
you can definitely do that. That is something that is not frowned upon. You can do that. Unless they explicitly say we don't do that, you can definitely do that.
Thank you for that. Then we have from Margaret that says, what if my proposal what is my proposal if for a startup? How do I zero in on organizations that are open to startups?
Okay, I believe we've answered that question already as far as like
Okay.
startups, businesses, and things of that nature. So again, I'll say you have to zero in on organizations or businesses or other businesses that, are set aside for-profit entities.
Mm. Then Rita asks, what if my proposal is oriented towards academic research to inform policy making?
Okay. That one, we've answered that one already. We've answered that one
Okay,
already.
all right. Then we have one from Djibouti. Thank you so much for joining. He asked, there is a serious obstacle with Djiboutians encounter once applying to any grants. Grants aren't available in my country. To say the least, we are not in the list of countries that can apply. How do I solve that problem?
Well, that's a problem, definitely, as far as like
Mm,
having access to particular grants. So again, that's more so going into grant research practices and looking for organizations that are looking for funders that kind of align with the work that you do. Again, when it comes to international funders, if we're talking from the US standpoint, we definitely have funds like, again, the US Embassy, if you, kind of want to connect with Austin or whatever a little bit after the fact, there are, you know, there are opportunities available to get funding. Again, as we stated in the beginning, we're going from aid to trade. So there are some resources that the US Embassy and or American Spaces can provide when it comes to that, having access to those resources. And then also looking locally as well too. Again, Kenya here in this country specifically has, different organizations, different businesses that provide, those solicitations. They provide those, those funding opportunities. You just have to make sure that whatever you're doing aligns with what they are doing on a policy level. So you just have to be a little bit strategic as far as how you do that research. But again, kind of search far and wide. Go to your different embassies. Look at, we already have a resource here as far as the embassy is concerned. So you can reach out for that and also see what's going on countrywide to align your programs and your organizations with the things that are being done policy-wise.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for that. Then we have a request, share with us samples of successful grant proposals. Yeah, several people asking for that, examples of successful proposals. Kindly share some sample.
So I will put a sample in your packet that I send out. So I'll put an example of a successful grant proposal that I've written before. So I will send that out.
Thank you. Then we have some comments here. With this explanation, it's easy to write a proposal for grants. Thank you. That's from Pamela.
Yep, thank you so much.
Vincent says, good presentation. Vincent from Kenya. Thank you for that. Now Stanley asks, can we have a book? Okay, can we book in form of a book? Okay, can you or a manual, have a manual or a book to guide through these steps in depth alongside the slides?
Yes, there are actually two books I always recommend. That was a great question. There are always two books that I really recommend. The first one is called Grant Writing for Dummies. Excuse the hilarious name. It's called Grant Writing for Dummies, and it's written by Dr. Bev Browning. She is a grant writer. She's been writing grants for, I want to say, about 40 years at this point, and she's won millions of dollars in grant funding. So her book, as far as how to systematically go about writing grants. Now, granted, it is still very much US based, but outside of that, the book is a phenomenal resource as far as just writing grants. And I would also say the same for grant writing, not grant writing, excuse me, nonprofits for dummies as well too. She also has written that book. So I always suggest those two books together if you have a nonprofit. And then the last book I always recommend is The Only Grant Writing Book That You'll Ever Need. I really, really, really love that book as a resource, as it really talks about just how to predict and how to anticipate the landscape changes within grant writing. So again, when it comes to those goodies, I will include the Amazon links for those books so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But those are the three books that I always, always, always recommend. So that was a great question. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much too. And so, yes, we are going to be sharing the recording for those who joined late. Yeah, so there's another one. How can we connect with the speaker directly for further mentoring? Yeah, that's a good question too.
Yes, so the next slide, or rather the last slide, will be this one right here, which has my contact info. So I have my email, which is fashalisk@gmail.com. And then also, if you want, you can always reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn as well too. And as far as a website or database, I'm going to stop share really quick, and I'm going to transfer over into that to said database, so you can see kind of what I'm one of the databases that I use. So we have grants.gov, and again, I will put that in the chat here. So you have grants.gov is the database you can go into, and that's US based, but they do at times, they have international opportunities. And then you have instrumental.com.
Okay.
Okay, so you do have instrumental.com. So let me pull that up as well too, so you can see. Copy. And then I'm going to actually show you instrumental, and then you have instrumental.com. So I want to show you kind of what that looks like. Let me go ahead and share my screen very quickly so you all can see. All right. So, okay, everybody should be able to see. So you have instrumental.com. They have like an entire, website where they have, this is my free trial, but this is for me when I did this, but you can just literally just go to instrumental.com for like your Google search here. And then this one is grant opportunities for nonprofits. And again, they do have filters for businesses as well too. But again, like most grants, they'll focus on that. So basically, they have different plans. So again, it is a price point, but if you reach out to them, they will. If you reach out to them, they will give you a free 2-week trial. But essentially, they are a monthly subscription. You have basics, which is like $179 per month, and then it goes up from there. So again, it's a little pricey, but I always say kind of visit it or look at it as an investment. And then with Instrumental, they'll walk you through like how the website is used as well too. So again, if you kind of get a little overwhelmed with how the website is laying out, they'll have that. So it is the largest active grants database. So they have like over 400, there we go, 470, K grants available. And you can search through focus area. So they'll show you all the different focus areas that they have. So again, they have many. They have, affordable housing, aging, arts nonprofit, capacity building nonprofits, community and school garden, community development, crime, cycling, like diversity nonprofits, domestic violence, earth science, and so forth and so forth. And then when it comes to location, you can give them any location you want. See, so again, you have your individual states, and then you have like different countries. So you can put like Europe, Haiti, Africa, and they break it down even further. And then they also have grant types. So you want corporate grants, association and society grants, private grants, federal grants, state and local grants, and so forth and so forth. And as you break it down by location, they'll give you the grants that fall into this category for your particular country. And then you can see like popular areas of focus, so like social justice grants, human and social services, operating grants for nonprofits, unrestricted grants for nonprofits. And then this is how it'll look, right? They'll pull up all of the different grants that are available. They'll show you what their deadlines are, the name of the organizations, and about them, and then you can also save them so you can go back and view them for later. So see, again, they have territories. You can click, you'll get different countries, cities, things of that nature. And then they'll go more into how you can, get access to that. And again, you can start a 14-day free trial. So again, what I say, if it's a little bit pricey, you can always just get the 14-day trial and just do a big scour and at least get maybe like the next solicitations for the next 6 months to the year. And then you can get access to those websites, and then go and look on the actual websites to get access to the solicitations. So that's what I always tell people. If it's a little bit pricey, at least just go in and do a complete scour of everything that's available. So again, I cannot recommend Instrumental enough. I love using it. It's very, very easy to use. So I always recommend Instrumental, and then also grants.gov. And then again,
Thank
if you
you.
want to, oh, sorry, Jane, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Lastly, for those who want to interact with me or possibly book me, I will be available for mentorship or, you know, bookings of things like that after August. As I stated before, like I do have my own grant entity that I work, you know, under. But again, as of right now, my full focus is strictly on where Fulbright is concerned. So if you want to contact me for something that's a bit more intuitive, like, hey, we want to hire you to write a grant for us. Hey, could you do a training for my organization or whatever the case may be? Those kind of requests I will be officially taking after August. So you will just have to wait 2 weeks. But if you simply just want to ask a couple of follow-up questions or just, you know, just want to connect with me a little bit, again, I'm always available on LinkedIn. And then I have my email here that again I'm going to put in the chat at gmail.com. And then again, for those of you all who kind of want to reach out to me after I, you know, wrap up all my Fulbright wonderfulness, the website, or rather the email that you want to connect with me on is this one, which is, let's see, is vkaba at kabagrants.com. So again, vashalis@gmail.com. Before August, after August, vkaba@kabagrants.com. So either one of those are fine. And then again, like I said, I'm on LinkedIn. I will put my LinkedIn link, put my LinkedIn link for you all to see me, just about, you know, kind of what I do on LinkedIn. Again, I'm pretty laid back on LinkedIn. But again, if you want to connect with me just to see what's going on, or if you want to see kind of who I follow grant writing wise, or when I post about grant related things, this is a great time. You know, it's a good time to follow me as well too. So my LinkedIn is here, and you're more than welcome to connect with me. But we've already went over time about 10 minutes, but I want to make sure that everybody had, you know, ample time to ask questions. So again, I'll be sending all of the goodies to Jane because again, it'll be difficult for me to get all of your emails out of this chat. So much going on. And I know Jane has a way better, she has a way, you know, better time of getting all of it to you, but I will send it out to you. So be looking for that information by the end of the week. So again, I'll send it to Jane and Jane will send it out directly to you all, and it will have lots of different goodies for you to use and things like that. And if you have any questions about those materials, please let me know. I don't mind answering questions as well too. But with all of that being said, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure speaking with you all. I had a really good time. The only thing I disliked is I hate we did not have way more time because again, each module can easily be its own presentation on its own. And I try my best to pack as much information as possible into 2 hours. So thank you so much. Have nothing but love for you all. And again, if you have any questions or concern, please reach out, and I'll stick around if people want to just ask couple of last minute questions. I'll stick around a little bit too, as long as Jane will have me as far as hanging out. So I'll still be here and I'll be hanging out. And again, thank you so much to Austin, all of the different board members and chairs of LPAC for hosting us and providing awesome information as well too. So thank you all so much and have a great rest of your evening.
Wow, thank you so much, Vashalis, for honoring us with that presentation and also coming to accepting to do this for LPAC and also our friends. Thank you for everyone who are able to join. We really appreciate the numbers were humongous. I mean, like that was a good number. Thank you so much. I know there are so many questions, but Vashalis has shared her contacts. Please reach out. I know there's a need to have a WhatsApp group. So please reach out to our email. Let me just write the email here, lpac@Kenya. Just in case we are not able to have all the details on our WhatsApp group. So in case someone was invited by a friend, there is our email. We normally have so many workshops, capacity building. For this particular one is leadership, capacity building. We also have other activities with our teachers of English and any other English professionals where we offer more professional development and partners. We partner with the US Embassy among others, like the British Council, the Hornby, yeah. And we also have an experts within us that we nurture talent for any facilitators. We would wish to make it open for everyone who would want to come and present for LPAC or in one of the LPAC webinars. So reach out to us. Yes, at this point, I think because of time, we can release anyone who wants to go, and we'll stop recording. In case you have any questions, please feel free. Vashalis is here to answer. And we'll just have 5 minutes for that. Yeah. Thank you so much. Let's send our flowers to Vashalis. Please. Let's send those flowers. Thank you so much.
So thank you so much, everybody. We did, thank you. I received the flowers. Thank you so much. We do have actually one question that came through the chat that said, how do you strike the right balance between quantitative data and statistics and qualitative evidence and stories? So I would say it usually overall, the usual rule of thumb is you want to include more quantitative, excuse me. You want to include more quantitative versus qualitative. Only because if you're trying to tackle a specific issue, say you want to, tackle literacy rates or improve literacy rates, say within Kenya or within your town, your state, city, whatever, you really want to have hardcore data to back up why you want to do that and why that's such an issue. So in cases like that, I'm always going to be an advocate for quantitative over qualitative, but qualitative is very useful as well too. So kind of use qualitative a bit more sparingly. So you can say like, hey, we're trying, this is the issue. This is the data that backs up the severity of the issue. We have already started, tackling this issue by doing X, Y, and Z. And, our participants, for example, report a, 95% satisfaction rate. We, really would love if you will partner with us and invest in the work that we do, right? So it's still a combination of you're using and you're quoting data, but you're also mentioning your satisfaction surveys. So that's very much qualitative, right? Like people, saying like, hey, I had, they helped me so much. I didn't think my reading or my writing could get better, but I partnered with them and I've improved so much. You can include that. But again, I would always say more quantitative versus qualitative, specifically if you're talking about the need statement. Sometimes funders will have specific areas where they will want you to include testimonials, stories, pictures, things like that as well too. But if we're talking about the need statement, more quantitative than qualitative for a need statement.
Thank you.
And you will get the recording as well too. Jane will send that out along with along with all the goodies that I'll be sending to you all as well.
Yeah, sure. So just to echo that, please email us. Please email us, those who are not on our WhatsApp groups. Please email us at lpackKenya@gmail.com. Yeah. lpackKenya@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, LPAC, English Language Professional Association of Kenya. Please reach it to us through Facebook. Yeah. So for now, bye-bye, everyone, and have a good night. You can switch on your mic so that we can hear your voices before you go.
Bye-bye, and thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Have a good night.
Bye.